So here we are. I am talking to my good friend Tetsu Yung, who is in Montreal. And we are close friends because we, every year, or until this year, we've worked together on the Long Fest. And I had a question from Ryan Jorgensen here and said, Steve, we're expecting our first child. I want to bring my child, I don't know if it's a boy or girl, up bilingual. Have you any suggestions? And I was very unsuccessful in getting our kids to learn languages. So I said, I will turn to the person who knows all about raising children who speak 2 or more languages. So Tetsu, nice to see you. And we're going to talk about that. And we're also going to introduce your channel, which is Ask Tetsu. And maybe you could briefly introduce yourself and what you have done, particularly to make your kids so wonderfully multilingual.
Well, thank you, Steve, for the great introduction. So my name is Tetsu Yung, and I run a channel called Ask Tetsu. So definitely, your viewers can ask me any question they
I'll leave
want.
A link in the description box too.
Fantastic, fantastic. And I have 4 children. My oldest, Ronnie, is almost turning 8 now. And then I have Nika, who's 6, Akila, who's 3, and we just had a 4th one in April.
Congratulations.
So
Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you. And all 4 of our children are being raised in 5 languages. That's English, French, Japanese, Mandarin, and Spanish. And these happen to be the same 5, obviously, that I, consider myself fluent in. I grew up in Taiwan to a Taiwanese father and a Japanese mother, and they've always, created an environment for me to be, to learn different languages, not through drills and schooling and whatnot, but really creating an environment where I would learn languages naturally. So I've taken that same mindset, that's worked well throughout the decades, just doing the same thing with a modern twist for my children, and so far it's working pretty well, I think. All my kids have a age standardized level, and I would say, at least 3 of the 5 languages, and the other 2 are pretty close.
Okay, and so, but of course, your native level in English. So how did you get from growing up in Taiwan? Maybe a little bit of background. How did you get from growing up in Taiwan, and you had parents that spoke those 2 languages, so presumably you became fluent in those 2 languages at home, but what's the rest of your story?
So, I grew up in Taiwan, but I was actually born in Hong Kong because my parents met in Hong Kong, but the whole family went back to Taiwan before I was 1 year old. So essentially I say I'm from Taiwan. And what happened is speaking Mandarin with my father all the time and Japanese with my mother, that creates 2 very strong languages since birth. And also in Taiwan, as you know, there's Taiwanese and Hakka, which are other languages in Taiwan. That's very well, it's very widespread. And then my parents sent me to an American school when I was 6. So that's where English came in. So English is my strongest language, but I never say it's my first language because chronologically speaking, it's not my first. But
because you study in it, you work in it, and right.
Yes. Well, I've been educated, in English. With a few years here and there in French when I was being in Quebec. So that's so Mandarin, Japanese, Hakka, Taiwanese, and English while I was in Taiwan. Then my parents decided to send me to Quebec after elementary school.
Wow!
So that's where French comes in, because they said my father has a younger sister, so that's my aunt, who I had never met before, married a Quebecer, so I came to Quebec for my high school. That's when French came in.
And whereabouts in Quebec?
0 base. So it's just outside of Montreal. There's a little town called Rigaud.
Okay, yeah, I know it, just off the island.
There's a song called Rigaud. There you go. So that's where I started my Canadian journey, which continues to today.
Just out of curiosity, you arrived at this high school in Rigaud with 0 French.
Yeah, 0 French. The first days I still remember. It's every question that was directed my way, I had a 50-50 chance of answering it. It's oui, no, but I'm stuck when they ask me how old I am.
And how long before you were able to function?
So this is a very interesting thing. I don't know why, but I was able to pick it up quite quickly.
You were what, 12,
And I would
13?
say 13,
yeah.
yes. I was 13 when I came.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't recall being, dysfunctional for a very long time.
And you weren't in a special
I know
class for
everybody's-
immigrant children or anything else. You were right in there with everyone else.
As a matter of fact,
Yeah.
they decided to put me in the trilingual group, the highest level in that
Right.
year, which is English, French, bilingual plus Latin. So I actually learned Latin
Right,
at school
okay.
also, rosa, rosae, feminine,
Right.
and all that. But that was how I started. And there's a test at the end of the first
Mm-hmm.
year, so there's secondary 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. For secondary 1, 2, and 3, if you have an average of 70 or 75% across all your subjects, you can be exempted from the last final exams. So everybody works hard for that, and I've worked hard definitely for that. But I was not expecting to get it the
Right.
first year. In fact, my parents were expecting me to redo secondary 1, given the language barriers. But I don't know. I was just so motivated, and I had so much fun when I came
Right.
here. With winter sports and just being in Canada. So it's an all-around fun thing that got me.
And there were no other
Integrated very quickly.
Chinese speakers or Japanese speakers in the school.
No, there was one Japanese at my school that I know
Right.
of. I did not. I came into secondary 1. He was in secondary 2, so he was like
Yeah. Okay.
somebody up there, and I never
Okay.
never talked to him.
All right. So, I think that's very interesting because you naturally learned without. I mean, obviously, you had French as a subject at the school, but you learned much more quickly than that. You learned by interacting with other people.
That's right. So I wouldn't say I learned French as a subject.
Right.
I learned in French
Right.
everything else.
Right.
And the French language part per se is really upon arrival. With my cousins,
Right.
just trying to figure it out with English and French.
Right.
Just slowly,
Right.
tipping the balance towards French. And it's a matter of months, I think.
Yeah.
I was able
Well, I mean, I had
to
the same
integrate.
experience coming to Canada from Sweden. And of course, I was much younger. I was 5, but I have no recollection of ever having any difficulty in communicating. I don't know when I sort of morphed from being a Swedish speaker to an English speaker. Quickly forgot my Swedish, which is not your case. And everything was in English. And that was that. I sometimes think by putting kids in these ESL classes today, they handicap them. But I guess they got so many of them that it's a difficult situation.
I agree.
So now let's move from that to your kids. So now
Yes.
I should confess first of all that my wife and I tried everything to get the kids to learn languages. Our focus was French. First of all, no, we put them in Japan. We were living in Japan. We put them in Japanese yochien, which wasn't very successful because the Buddhist priest kept on hitting them over the head when they weren't sitting straight. Senaka pin, bah! They didn't like the cultural shock that they got there. And then we put them into a bilingual school in Ottawa when we were living there, sent them to French summer camp, and nothing but resistance. And in the end, I gave up. So what did we do wrong, and what did you do right?
Well, I don't know if you did anything wrong. I'm sort of wondering what happened. So in Japan, if you're, how old were you?
Oh, they
at that
were,
time?
whatever, yochien, 3,
five,
5,
six,
6,
right?
something like that. They wore these goofy hats and, you know.
And they resisted.
They resisted it. They didn't like it. I mean, that was less of an issue. I think the age was an issue. That was not an issue. Like, and they played soccer with Japanese kids, although they were teased as being foreign kids. But no, I think if we had stuck with it, if we had stayed in Japan and they had stayed with that, that would have worked.
That's
when then they ended up going to. No, we did stay in Japan. Then we went to the Saint. What was it called? I can't remember the school in Tokyo run by the Quebec fathers there, St. Mary's.
Oh,
St.
yes,
Mary's,
yes.
okay?
Yes.
So then their education was in English. But then it was more the French effort that failed. You know, the Japanese effort was very early on, and we moved back to Canada, so that was that. But so how do you
what
approach
age were
this?
they?
Like, I have heard stories of people trying to get their kids to learn a language. I mean, I can remember when, with my parents, they tried to say, we're going to speak French around the dinner table, and that lasted for about 3 minutes, and then we'd revert back to English. So I think there are a lot of people who have been unsuccessful in getting their kids to learn languages. So what did you do that was successful?
I focus on taking away as much of the learning language, this active learning part. And I focus a lot on creating the environment where they need to speak that language, where they need to interact with people who speak that language. So it's really a matter of making it useful for them and making it easier for you as a parent also to create a habit to speak a specific language with the kids. So I speak, even though I speak these languages, I only speak one language with the kids, and that's Mandarin. And and I do that exclusively. When I say exclusively, it means all the interactions, meaningful interactions that I have with my kids are in Mandarin. So there's a habit that has been built that's so ingrained that it's weird to do otherwise. That's what we're looking for with the kids. Doesn't mean they don't see me speak other languages with other people. Doesn't mean I can't read to them in a different language. It means that the mode of communication between myself and the kids is always in Mandarin. And that's just natural. It's just a habit. So for every language we teach them, we create that environment where they have to do it. So Mandarin with me, Japanese with mom, who's Japanese, so that's a natural thing. Living in Quebec, going to a Quebec school, that's French, and English through certain inputs by TV or some Anglophone friends around here. Their skating coach is in English. My daughter's horseback riding coach is in English. That kind of input. And then we sometimes have exchange students who speak English. We have au pairs who speak English sometimes. And the fifth language is Spanish. And this, we have consistently hired au pairs from Mexico. So they always have a person with whom they need to speak Spanish, their caregiver. So that's where they have that communication. That's their language of the heart with that person.
Now, a couple of comments or questions here. First of all,
Yes.
I have heard your kids, not the most recent child, congratulations again, but the others speak these languages, and they are truly remarkably fluent and comfortable in those languages. They remind me of that girl from Russia that we had at the Long Fest a couple of years ago.
Yes.
Now, and so both of her parents were essentially, if I remember correctly, they were more or less maybe the mom spoke English, but the dad spoke only Russian, I believe.
Yes. Well, their English is,
limited.
It's learned.
So then the question is, and she was remarkable. She spoke like 7 or 8 languages very well.
Yes.
So my question, I think a lot of people at home are saying, okay, Tets, good for you. You have a Japanese-speaking wife. You speak several languages.
Yeah.
Your parents speak several languages. That's a rather unique environment. So what does your average parent do who doesn't have those advantages?
So my first rebuttal. Whoop, sorry about that.
Oops, we have 13 at 13. Okay.
Oops, sorry about that. I had my microphone came off. Okay. My first rebuttal to that is that your average parent is not looking for 5 languages.
Right.
Okay.
Bilingual is good. Yeah.
The great majority is a second language, and I think with the different methods that we apply, just Spanish is something we brought in completely artificially.
Right.
And it's working very well. So for a second language, you don't have to look at me and say, well, you have a special situation. I'm not going to deny we have a special situation, although it's not completely, it's not completely due to there's so many couples who are in cross-cultural marriages, and we've made a choice to live in Quebec. So these are things that you can, if you want to, if you really want to do it, you can. There's nothing
so
that's out of
to summarize, if you have 2 languages within your marriage, you are suggesting that you should get in the habit of each parent speaking to their children or child in one language all the time.
Almost. Yes. Okay. Well, first, yes, if that's the only answer. Yeah. But if you are if let's say you're a French and a Spanish couple living in the UK, then I would recommend, yes, each speak, in French and Spanish and English outside of the home, and that's great. So that would make 3 languages relatively easily. Now, if one parent was actually in English who speaks French, let's say, then since they're living in the UK, I would recommend this parent to also speak French to make the home language, so this is called minority language at home, stronger. So the French would have much more exposure if the English parent has a strong enough French.
So that you have, say, the mom is, say, Spanish or Chinese or something, and the dad is English, living in London, but the dad speaks French. So then the mom speaks Chinese, the dad speaks French, and the kid gets, or the children get English in the society, outside.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So the community language is very, very strong. So I never worry about the community language. It's what it's the weaker languages where you have less exposure that I always try to balance out. So in our situation, Mandarin is one of our weakest because I am the only input along with my father. But Japanese is quite strong because they spend so much time with mom. And so I would say that their real strongest emotional language is Japanese.
Right.
So when they have something that really need to express, it would be in Japanese. When they talk to each other, when they're just the kids alone, often it's in Japanese. So, but
okay, but getting back to the earlier point, so what if you are you're living in the States, you're both American, you both speak English, you both speak, say, one, or say between the two partners there, you have two languages that you speak as non-natives. Maybe you don't speak them that well. What are your options?
Okay. It's all a matter of balance. If you're not very strong, but you don't have too much, let's say, resources to hire a native speaker or send them to school or whatever, then your options are you do it, you read the books to them and you speak that language with them, but you have to figure out what the trade-offs that you're willing to accept. Are you willing to learn the language with the kids? That's one option, right? Otherwise, if you really think that this language, let's say it's Spanish, if you really want them to speak Spanish, then you speak a relatively low level of Spanish. You don't want your kids to pick up all your accents, then I would say hire a nanny who speaks Spanish all the time, or bring in an au pair, or exchange student who speaks Spanish. That sort of alleviates the financial aspects.
So, just to pick up on that then, what you're saying is you really need a live speaker who speaks the language well. Ideally a native speaker, failing that, someone who speaks the language well. A live person to interact with the child.
Yes. There's a lot of controversy over whether TV or videos, devices can allow your children to learn languages. I don't say no. I definitely think there's a certain level of input that you can get, but there's a lot of research that says you need that live interaction, and a lot of that I think is the connection that you make with humans, that emotional bond that allows you to really want to speak, want to communicate with that person. So I can bring in, I've had Mexican au pairs who were responsible for teaching Spanish, English to my kids. Their English is, it's good on a conversational level, but accent-wise, there's a little accent. But I don't worry about that too much because there's a lot of TV that our kids watch in English, and that corrects their accent. I mean, theoretically.
Yeah, I totally agree. A small amount of somewhat accented English in the massive amounts of input that they get is going to have no influence. Yeah.
That's right.
Listen, Tetsu, what I would suggest, because I have a feeling we could talk for a long, long time on this.
Yeah.
Sometimes people see a 20-minute video and they say, "Oh, I'm not going to listen to this." So we're going to stop it here. And what I'm going to say is, people who are interested in this subject, please send us your questions. Tetsu and I can do it again. Please also go to Ask Tets. You'll see the link to his website. And that's a YouTube channel, isn't it?
YouTube
channel.
Yes.
And we should also perhaps, if there's interest, we can have the same discussion in Japanese, in Chinese, in French, in Spanish. So all these possibilities are there. But I wanted to sort of respond to Ryan Jorgensen and get this subject out there for my viewers. And I'm looking forward to your response. And please ask Tets.
Anytime. Go out there, raise the next global citizen for
there we go.
For the benefit of everyone.
Okay. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Steve.